know for every parent that got to hear Let It Go over and over and then over again, I just have to tell you something. My kids were older by the time this movie came out, and that was not my kids' movie. No, 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 no. Marlena watched Finding Nemo 6 times a day. So there are times that I'm very tired and I'm done and I'm walking through the store, and this is what my kids hear out of me. Just keep swimming, just keep swimming. Because that is what I quote, is all sorts of Nemo. But of course, my girls really adapted to Frozen when it came out, and Simone and Marlena would be in the back of the car, and all of a sudden I hear, "Do you want to build a snowman?" And I'm like, oh my gosh, it's 75 degrees out. What are you talking about? There's no snow. They would sing it in the middle of summer. So you got to love it. Your kids keep you on your toes. We're going to talk about seasons tonight. I think it's kind of fitting that we're going into Frozen with this. I originally, when I first told my mom Frozen, it was the second part that we were all talking about. And I said, but that's not the first part. The first part's about seasons. We got to go there first. So my heart's already in the second one, ready to go. But God said, no, you got to lay the groundwork first. I've really enjoyed getting to do these little things. I know sometimes people are like, how can you get anything spiritual out of a Disney movie? Disney's evil. Yeah, they really have evil intentions. But you know, the amazing thing is God can come up with all sorts of things out of even our people's evil craziness. I was watching Batman, the one where he gets his back broke, and they break his back. He ends up in this prison cell, and he's got to heal, and then he's got to get up. And there's this one part where he's got to get up out of the pit, and they're screaming "Rise" in another language, and the whole time I'm sobbing like a baby. And my husband goes, "What is with you?" And I said, "This is so spiritual," and I'm just losing it. He goes, "You are so weird." I said, "I know." I said, but that's how I felt 2 years ago. Like the devil broke me. And I had to come out of it. And I'm sitting the whole time going, how did they find my life? I mean, it was so funny. God can speak to you in Batman. He can speak to you in a cartoon. He can speak to you from a rock, or he can speak from a donkey. When he starts using your animals that you beat and mistreat to get your attention, he can speak from a lot of different ways. So when God first told me about doing Frozen, I kind of went, oh, Lord. I said, but that one's going to be a tough one. In fact, when I mentioned it to my daughter, she said, Mom, you do know that some of this has really bad undertones of lesbianism, all sorts of stuff. She named a whole bunch of things. She says, you do know this, they did this, and they said this. And I said, I'm not going there. I said, that's kind of totally different from what the Lord showed me. So I said, I'm going to go where God showed me to go. Frozen came out in 2013. It's animated, of course. There's actually 2 different ones. There's Frozen 1 and Frozen 2. And so this is actually going to be a compilation technically of both movies to a degree, because I'm not going to do up a second part of it. So there's a little bit of both in there. This is actually an adaptation from The Snow Queen, which is by Hans Christian Andersen. His fairy tale called The Snow Queen. And somebody asked me, well, Frozen isn't really a real fairy tale. It actually is an adaptation from Hans Christian Andersen's Snow Queen. The film depicts a princess who sets off on a journey alongside an Iceman, his reindeer, and a snowman to find her estranged sister whose icy powers have inadvertently trapped their whole kingdom in eternal winter. Elsa and Anna are sisters and daughters of King Agnar and Queen Iduna. It's hard to say. They rule a little kingdom called Arendelle, and Elsa is the eldest sister. Elsa finds out that she was born with the gift of winter and ice. She's pretty much a female version of Jack Frost. So Anna and Elsa play in this castle in the beginning as the movie opens. And Elsa is making a winter wonderland for her sister. In the middle of their play and having a great time, she accidentally zaps Anna with her power, which causes ice to go into Anna, and it could go to her heart. So as the story begins to unfold, one of their little pastimes was to make Olaf. Olaf was, and that's who you just saw in the little song. Olaf is their little play buddy that's made of snow, the little snowman. So Anna accidentally is struck by Elsa's power, and as she's trying to create snow for Anna to play in, and Anna is struck unconscious. Elsa is instructed by her parents after they go to these little troll things in the story. She's instructed by her parents to hide her gifts. Her gifts are actually really, really combined with her emotions. So the more heightened Elsa feels, everything happens. So her parents tell her to hide her gifts, to conceal and not feel. And I thought we're going to talk more about that as the series goes on, because I thought that very fitting, how often as little girls we're told, you may feel that, but just conceal it, don't show it, don't talk about it. And you were never really taught how to deal with your feelings and your emotions, and neither was Elsa. And so as time goes on, Elsa not only hides her gifts, she becomes isolated. And she isolates herself in order to, out of fear, but also to keep her family safe from her powers that she didn't know how to control. So more of this will be explained with time. Elsa and Anna's childhood is not only stumped by Elsa's fear of her gifts and isolating to keep her power secret and keep her sister safe, the girls in their teen years lose their parents to a shipwreck. Their parents perish during an away trip, leaving the girls orphans. So here's the girls, and they're the rulers of a kingdom, but they're too young to rule yet. So they're kind of left alone to isolate until they become of age. And Elsa finally becomes of age, and she steps into her queenhood. But Elsa has never really been in public. She didn't know how to behave. She didn't know how to handle things. Again, her emotions really get her in trouble. So as the story progresses, she kind of shows her powers, and it freaks everybody out. So she ends up running away from everyone. In both movies, Frozen 1 and 2, it shows the sisters going through different seasons in their life. Loss, finding purpose, choosing their path, handling all that comes along in their journeys. Life is a journey, and there's many ups and downs and ebbs and flows. And there's many seasons that we've all endured and many seasons that we will go through and still continue to go through. The Bible says that Jesus came to give us life and life more abundant. Mark Laurie one time explained life as a series of roller coasters, ups and downs. You're doing this all the time. There's always little activity and all these different things going on. There's high highs and there's low lows. There's mountain hills. There's valleys. There's all the little spins and turns of life. He says, but Jesus came to give us life and more abundant. So it just gets bigger. And I was talking to somebody the other day, and I said, I think a lot of times people have a misconception of coming to Christ. They think, well, if I come to Christ, that all my troubles are going to go away. That's not what the Bible says. Jesus tells us we're going to have trials and tribulation. He also says, I came to give you life and more abundant, which means your life you had before him is now going to feel more extreme, not less. The highs are going to be higher and the lows might even be lower. But here's the key. You're never alone. Not only do you have the Holy Spirit and you have Jesus, but now you have a family. You have a family going through the same things that you're going through. You're not doing this life alone. I don't know how the world does it. How do they isolate? Elsa isolated in order to keep everybody away because she couldn't control herself. She isolated and in that isolation, she isolated her sister. So sometimes we think, well, I'm just isolating for me. But in your isolation, you're actually isolating everyone who cares for you. Often when we isolate like that, we isolate our families. And we don't realize that we're affecting our spouses, our kids, especially when you're a mom. and you're a mom. When I was a foster parent, I dealt with kids that would come and tell me the things that their parents struggled with and then why they were in foster care in the first place. The number one thing I heard was, well, my mom just got really depressed and just ended up in bed all day. Well, in the isolation, I was just doing it because that's how I was feeling, but you isolated your children with your pain. What Elsa didn't realize is here she was feeling all of this, but she was isolating everyone else around her too. We often don't realize that we are doing the same things to other people. We think we're just doing it for us. But our lives, we're not islands. Our lives touch and intermingle other people all the time. We are constantly touching someone and affecting their life. So how are we affecting them? If you live in a household and one or both of your parents have like bipolar mechanisms where they're real high highs and real low lows, as a child you learn to please everybody and walk around on eggshells and struggle with that because you have to keep everybody safe and calm so that you don't have these big fluctuations of emotion. And that's a horrible thing as a child, to bear this burden of adulthood so young. And I see Elsa in that position where her mom and dad are telling her to conceal and don't feel it. And it's like, why don't you teach her how to use it? Why don't you teach her how to do something with this instead of isolating her more out of your own fear? See, really, as parents, we often parent from our own fears. We parent our children from the fear that we have. Well, I don't want them to go down that road because I went down that road, so I'm going to keep everything away from them. That's not the answer. The answer is teach them. Teach them beyond it so that they can make really good decisions. Well, what if they choose that? Well, if they choose that, did you teach them the consequences? And then let them make a decision. I think that's the greatest thing we can do as a parent. But teaching our children from our fears simply isolates them. And then we make little monsters out of them. Because eventually they have to get out of the isolation. And when they break, have you ever seen somebody break out of it? They throw the whole kingdom into winter, is what they do. They affect everybody in their moment. I mean, that's what Elsa did. She literally, the whole kingdom was affected in her moment of getting out of her isolation, instead of her parents teaching her how to handle it. So there was this disconnect that took place. And yes, we all go through ebbs and seasons and flows and different things, but how do we handle it? I think how we handle it really shows our maturity. Not only as people in age, but even spiritually, it shows our maturity. We all go through terrible times sometimes. I think the past year and a half, if that is not evident, because we've all been through horrific things the past year and a half. I don't know anybody that this pandemic and all the different things, and I don't even want to call it a pandemic because it feels so fake to me, but whatever you want to call it what you want to call it. The fact is all of us have been touched by it in some way. And in its effect, it has frozen some people solid. They're unable to move, unable to function, can't handle it. And so many people, out of their own fears, have isolated themselves and their families and caused great damage. Not thinking about the long-term effects. There's a long-term effect. And then, even as a believer, you've got believers who have literally pretty much walked away from their faith in some way. Not gone to church, not been connected with anybody. It's not easy to connect. Everybody's kind of still in their, we got to stay 6 feet apart thing. Yeah, I'm not very good at that. I need to touch. I need to hug people. I look at Elsa, and for her to touch somebody, she had to wear gloves in order to try to control what was constantly surging in her. I think, oh my gosh. To have to wear a mask all day long, to have to wear gloves all day long, and that's the only way you can touch somebody. One of the most dangerous things when a baby's first born and they're unhealthy and they end up being like a little incubator, and they're in the little, that's what they are, because it's not really a crib. And they're in there. One of the most dangerous things is, yes, you're trying to keep them healthy and from all the sickness, But touch makes a child thrive. Touch makes us adults thrive. You show me somebody who hasn't been touched, and I'm going to show you someone who's struggling with life. God desires to touch us, and Jesus is not afraid of the leper, so he comes close. You know, God's not afraid of our seasons in our life. He's not afraid of your questions. When you're going through a hard season, so often we think, is it okay for me to question why? Absolutely. See, God didn't mind Job questioning him why. The problem was when the friends came involved and started making Job question God and who he was. It's one thing to question God why. It's another thing to begin to question God's character. That's a different story. So seasons come. The past 2 years have been very hard on every woman here. Many have lost jobs, friends, family, income, and even homes. Some have struggled with their health, and it's still a constant struggle. We've all struggled with fear, and in some way, the fears of others too. You know, I haven't walked in fear myself, but I feel like I've had to deal with a lot of other people's fears. Like, okay, come on, can we get this together? Parenting and grandparenting has changed. For some of us, getting to really spend time with your grandkids has been a strange thing. For me, parenting really changed because we did our little, everybody was quarantined in their house. And my daughter basically lost her senior year. And we went through all of that loss. And we're still picking up the pieces, the emotions of that. I mean, many times I've sat and had conversations with her. She's working tonight. She goes, I'd be there, Mom, but I'm working. I'm like, I know. But many times I've had conversations with her, and the loss is still very deep in her heart. And it will always be there. It's nothing I can gain back. And sometimes I think as a parent, it makes me feel so helpless that I cannot fix it. I can't change it. I can't go back and flip time and make it better. If anything, it makes me want to wring some people's necks that should have known better. And trust me, if I ever met Fosse face to face, I have some things to say. Our kids' lives are forever scarred by these past 2 years. I remember 9/11 really affected people. We all know where we were. It affected us in a great way. These past 2 years have really sat on our children's souls and affected them in great ways, and not good. We have entered a season that none of us are fond of. I'm not real fond of this season. I kind of sit back and look at God and say, what are you doing? I'm not okay with this. And what he always tells me is, I got this, Jasta. Yeah, I know you have it, but I don't. I don't have this. I love the fact I can be real with my Father. He knows me. I found out years ago I could be more real with him than anybody. Because he's the one, he knows me. He knows me in and out. He knows my flaws. He knows my good things. He knows the not good things. And he loves me besides it. And you know what? I can talk real with him. But one thing I don't do is question his character because I know him. I know his character. I may question like, God, are you sure? Are you sure? But then I always hear, I got this. We've struggled with loneliness and isolation. I think we feel like Elsa a bit. We feel like somebody shoved us in our room and said, don't feel. Just conceal it all. Wear your mask like a good little girl. Put your gloves on. Shut up. Me just wants to scream, shut up and let me out of this room. I'm just going to ice you all. That's how I feel, okay? The loneliness and the isolation has gotten to women. It is just, and we as women especially. Men, they go to work. They use all their words at work so they come home and have nothing left to say. But us women, we haven't even begun. Our conversation has been with a 2-year-old all day. Do you know how much adult conversation I need when all I have done is talk to a 2-year-old all day? When my only conversation has been with my puppies? My husband has lots of words that are going to come flying at him. Because all I've said is, good job, doing really good, walking. Oh, yeah, really cute. Well, let's clean up that piddle. Let's do this. I mean, come on, when my husband gets home, I got lots to say. I take care of My husband's handicapped brother, he lives with us, and I do have a worker at my house, so when we're working, but we do a lot of stuff together. And sometimes, if you've ever worked with a handicapped person, there is wonderful days where you laugh. And then there's other days where you want to pull your hair out because they've asked the same question 300 times. And you're like, I mean, it's almost worse than a 2-year-old because this is a 50-year-old. So it's like, it's worse. I don't know why. It just is. It's a different level of like, will you stop already? This obsession sometimes. And other times, really funny moments, like we're in the van the one day and we gave him an ice cream cone. And we just completely forgot. We were busy. We gave him the ice cream, and we're thinking, oh, that's going to take him a few minutes. And I said, did you take the paper off the cone? And Alana reaches back to take the paper off the cone. The cone is gone. He ate the whole thing. So we learned a lesson. The paper comes off the cone before we hand it to him. And we learn these lessons, and we laugh, and there's wonderful seasons. And then there's, like I said, there's seasons, oh, Lord, what am I into? Elsa grew up in a world hiding from the world, maybe because of disease, maybe because of plague, maybe because she couldn't handle herself. Maybe it was political. That's how I have felt this past 2 years, and I know I'm not the only one. I look to the scriptures to see what woman in the Bible has gone through many seasons. I looked at Naomi. Naomi lost her 2 sons and her husband, and the Bible says she became bitter, and she changed her name to Myra, which meant bitter. But God stepped in and gave her Ruth, who gave her purpose. See, Naomi got out of herself when she started realizing she saw this woman and said, you need a husband. And Naomi became matchmaker. Did you ever notice that? She became the matchmaker. She became the one that said, I know how to get a man, and you have no clue, lady. So I'm going to teach you how to do this. And then she became the wet nurse for her grandson. God fulfilled her need and gave her purpose when she got her focus off of herself and started doing something with it. Mary, the mother of Jesus, lost her husband and her son. The Bible doesn't say when Joseph died, but according to Jewish culture and what you see even, more than likely when Mary came to Jesus and said, and they said, your mother and your sisters or your siblings are here, and Jesus said, tell him I'm already with my family. More than likely, the reason why they came to him at that time was because that was probably the burial of Joseph. So she'd already lost her husband. You don't see him after the birth or after they come back from Egypt. And then she loses her son, her firstborn son. Yes, we knew it was going to happen, but that doesn't matter. Because she still loses him. But yet, everlasting life became hers through her sacrifice. So God always did something with it. Moses' mother lost her son. And then her son was raised in Pharaoh's house. But by saving Moses' life, it eventually saved her other children from slavery. But that's not a fun season to be in. A season where you have to hide your baby in the bulrushes and in a basket down the Nile River where there's crocodiles and fish and who knows what. Praying for their safety, but also praying that the wrong human doesn't find them because they'll kill them. Every one of these women went through great storms and great situations, but God brought them through, and it serves to a lesson for all of us. But there's a woman who stands out that I say gets the trophy of the worst season to go through, and that is Job's wife. Job's wife literally lost everything in a day. Job's wife, according to Jewish culture, her name was Sidis. I can't even hardly say that right. Her name may have actually been the same root word as Satan in Hebrew. It was considered unfaithful wife. She was a princess, and Job was a tribal leader. Job was faithful to the Lord. Job's wife had no relationship with God whatsoever except through her husband. And her response to what Job went through was simply, Job, get up and earn it back. Or, Job, if you're not going to do that and you can't do it, curse God and die. Her answer to him was and everybody's always like, look at this woman everybody really gives her a bad rap. But I have to say this. How many of us in this room can honestly say we've lost everything in a day? I've had extreme situations happen in my life. I've had extreme seasons. My kids are alive. She had 10 children and they all died sitting in the same building together that day. They lost their wealth, and I just beg to differ. I think the worst thing that ever could have happened to Job's wife happened. Her husband got sick. Have you ever taken care of an ailing man? Have you ever taken care of a man who has sores all over his body and is in the worst pain in the world? Have you ever taken care of a man that has a cold? Now, women, we get a cold, and we still have to get up and get our kids to school. We still have to get up and do the laundry. We still have to get out of bed, and we have to take a shower and look human, because we're going to go to the grocery store to go get ourselves meds, and who knows what girlfriend we're going to run into, and we have to look good for them. So we pull ourselves together. Men lay in bed, and it is a moan and a groan, and you have thought that World War, I don't know. You just thought the worst thing has hit them. It is so difficult. And you go through that long enough, and as a woman, it'll drive you nuts. And you wonder why she became bitter. Really. First of all, she lost all her kids in a day. And her husband got sick all at the same time. I don't know about you, that's pretty bad. I've had my kids get ill. I've gone through those things with them. But it's another thing to have all this happen to her. She's grieving over the loss of her children, and now her husband's sick. He's not able to hold her in her grief. Nope. She's having to make him soup all the time and take care of him and deal with, and the worst thing is your husband gets sick and all his friends decide to show up. And now you've got to entertain them, because their culture back then was the woman had to feed everybody, right? That was kind of, it was like the little Italian grandmas who have to feed the whole neighborhood. And she's frustrated. I'm in mourning. What are you doing in my house? My husband's sick. I do not want to have to deal with all of you. She was not a happy camper. But I feel for Job's wife. A lot of people talk, she has a bad rap. And a lot of people talk really bad about her. Tim Hawkins has a joke about her where he says, did you ever notice that Satan killed off everybody around Job except for his wife? He was even scared of her. And I'm like, oh, that's so bad. It's so bad. Because I feel for this woman. She's lost everything. She has the most extreme season I've ever seen anyone go through. She probably doesn't handle it very good. Telling her husband to curse God was not a good thing. That was a, lady, we need to talk. You need to get saved, honey. She needed Jesus at that moment. She didn't have a relationship with God. She only had it through her husband. And here he is, struck down and sick. She didn't see a good side of God at this point. She didn't see his mercy and his grace. She didn't see provision that God was going to restore everything double. She didn't know that. She didn't see that part of God's nature. That yes, we go through hard times, but God allows those hard times to purify us. He allows those seasons to do something in us. And then he moves us beyond them if we don't get stuck. You can get stuck in a storm and stay there and kind of anchor yourself in the storm. Get the anchor up and let God blow you where you need to go. Like, don't get stuck in yourself. Don't get stuck in a bad season. How do you not get stuck in a bad season? Don't get bitter. Bitterness will stick you every time. A sour attitude will stick you in that season until you learn your lesson. I learned a long time ago that when I go through a tough season, the reason why I ask God why is not because I don't trust him. It's because, God, what lesson do I need to learn, and learn quickly? I'm not afraid of the season. I just want to learn this quickly because I don't want to hunker down in the middle of a storm. I once healed from a very difficult time in my life. And when I came through on the other side, I felt very whole. I'm not perfect, but I felt whole. And I remember going through another difficult time, and I told my mom, I said, this time I'm going to heal really quick. The last time took 4 years. I'm going to heal overnight in this one. Because I didn't want to stay there. I didn't want to go through all of that mess again. It was hard enough to heal the first time. I was anxious to not stay stuck in my pain because I didn't want to hunker down in the storm there. Satan leaves Job's wife there to contend with Job. She tells Job to curse God. She loses all of her life. She loses everything. Actually, according to Jewish history, eventually his wife dies, and when Job regains everything, it's with his second wife, Dinah. Why? Because of her bitterness. Her bitterness, she never even got to see the joy of what came later because she stayed in her bitterness. So yeah, she gets a bad rap, but she didn't really handle that storm very good. Except for I can't really knock on her because how many of us would handle it right either? I mean, we have her story to compare it to. She had nothing. Job was actually probably one of the first books written before the Pentateuch. She had nothing to compare it to. Absolutely nothing. But to lose all your children and all your status and all your wealth and your husband's health. She became bitter. She became frustrated, scarred, and cursed. Elsa gets isolated in this movie. And the fear that grows in her, the fear, that's one of the things about isolation. Isolation causes you to begin to fear things that you shouldn't even be afraid of. Why are you afraid of that? Because you're so isolated from everything. You have no concept of anything. You take a child and put them in a cage and never teach them how to, even a little dog, if you take a dog and always had him in a kennel, but you never taught him how to respect the road, the first time you let them out of the kennel, they're going to run into the road. It's just our nature to run towards danger. We don't even understand fear. Or they literally will go back into the kennel and never leave. There's two reactions that we have. We go ballistic with it, or we run back into the kennel because that's all we know. I feel like some people got so isolated that when the doors opened up, they went back in their house and said, it's more comfortable in here. Do you know the doors are open? Do you know the cage is open? Nope. They don't have a clue. That has become home. And they've made themselves a little jail cell. And it's become comfortable. Isolation is a very powerful tool, but it's a weapon. You isolate the wrong person, and it can be really painful when they come out because they're going to lash out at you. You isolate certain people, and they'll stay isolated for the whole of their life. I'm one of those people that I'll hurt you when I come out. And I think that that's how some people are feeling, and that's why our culture's just like in culture shock. Because you got the bears that are coming out of theirs, and they're like, we've hibernated, we're done. We are hungry and we want food. We're not isolating anymore. And then you got the other ones, and they'll go back but the ones that go back are the ones that concern me. Because the ones that go back, they die. There's a part of them that lays down and dies. They don't thrive. That concerns me, that they're not thriving. When our puppy was born a few weeks ago, he wasn't thriving. So we had to force him to thrive. I had to force his mama to pay attention to him. I had to take the other dogs out of the way and get him attention to help bring in that thriving nature. Why? Because he wasn't going to be able to do it on his own. I feel like I need to go into some of these people's house and go, open the windows. Come on. Just come on. So if you got a friend that's isolating, go mess with them. Quit. Well, I got to leave them alone and just respect them. No. because they're going to die in their isolation. You better get in there and do something. If you care about them at all, you're going to have to force them to connect again. That's really hard. We've already done that as ministers. We've called people on the phone. Where are you? Why haven't I seen you in a year? Well, I'm busy doing this. You need to get back in the house of God. And they think we're annoyances. My mother-in-law used to say, I'm not a pastor, I'm a pester. My job is to pester you. And I was like, yeah, well, she did that. But you know what? People knew she's because she loved them. They knew it. How you go through a storm or a season determines where you land. It also determines if you ever land. Because, again, you can get stuck in a storm and you can get stuck in a season. If you've ever been in a winter season in your life, no one wants to stay in a winter season in their life. It's the season of hibernation and isolation. It's the season of cold. It's the season of not growing. But winter has a purpose. It's also supposed to be a season of rest. But that doesn't mean you rest forever, because if you rest and you never get to spring where you grow, then your winter has become your cell. That's not what God intended you to go through. When you're in a storm, when you're in a struggle, when you're going through a season in life, do not get bitter. Do not get broke down. Do not get lost. Do not get frustrated. Do not get scared, and don't certainly curse your life. Watch your mouth. If you're bitter in a moment, that's the time to zip your lips and get your praise on. Do not curse your life in that moment. That's a very dangerous place, because what you say right there is where you're going to land. Seasons will show you what you really believe. Sorry, I misspelled that. Seasons will show you what you really believe in and whom you really believe. The season we're going through is actually exposing the church. It's exposing who we are as believers and what we really believe our God is capable of. It's exposing what we really believe we're called to. It's exposing who we really live for. And it's exposing who we really trust. It's exposing the church as a whole. There's a reason for this season. It's bringing the dross up to the top and exposing it. We're being put through the fire for a reason. It's bringing up the impurities. That's how you refine gold. It's how you refine silver. I used to tell the Lord, I said, Lord, I know you're the potter and I'm the clay, but I'm not a whole big fan of this, you putting me through the banging process and trying to chip off stuff off of me. I don't like this process. Sometimes we get little nicks and stuff in us, and they're little chips, and God has to pull out an extra little chiseling tool. I know there were times I said, Lord, you don't have to put me in the tumbler to shine me with all these rocks. They're tumbling me just fine. I mean, I have lots of analogies with what he has done in my life in these seasons where I felt very, very banged around. Like, all right, Lord, what are you doing to me? I'm shining you. Will you stop already? Am I not shiny enough? There is a way of exposing the deep-rooted things in us. And that purpose is every season that we go through exposes something. To everything there is a season and a time for every matter or purpose under heaven, Ecclesiastes chapter 3. A time to be born, a time to die, a time to plant, a time to pluck up what is planted. A time to kill, a time to heal, a time to break down, and a time to build up. A time to weep, a time to laugh, a time to mourn. A time to dance, a time to cast away stones, and a time to gather stones together. A time to embrace and a time to refrain from embracing. A time to lose, a time to keep, a time to cast away, and a time to rend, and a time to sow. A time to keep silence, and a time to speak. A time to love and a time to hate, a time for war and a time for peace. I have seen the painful labor and exertion and miserable business which God has given to the sons of men, for with which to exercise and busy themselves. He has made everything beautiful in its time. He also has planted eternity in men's hearts and minds, a divinely implanted sense of purpose working through the ages, which nothing under the sun but God alone can satisfy. Yet so that men cannot find out what God has done from the beginning to the end, I know there is nothing better for them than to be glad and get to and do good as long as they live. And also that every man should eat and drink and enjoy the good of all of his labor. It is a gift of God. And that does not mean go out and party and get drunk. The eat and drink there means take care of your body. I know that whatever God does, it endures forever, and nothing can be added to or nothing can be taken from it. And God does it so that men will reverently fear him and worship him and know that he is. And that which is now already has been. And that which is already has been, God seeks that which is passed away so that history repeats itself. Wow, does it ever. Moreover, I saw under the sun that in the place of justice there was wickedness, and in that place of righteousness, wickedness was there also. And I said to my heart, God will judge the righteous and the wicked, for there is a time appointed for every matter and purpose, and for every work. Ecclesiastes 12 really, really sums up all 12 chapters of Ecclesiastes. Solomon, the wisest person that ever lived, and the most foolish. Went through so much, struggled with women, struggled with all the different things he struggled with. And in Ecclesiastes, he's lamenting at the last days of his life and trying to figure out what is the purpose of life. And this is what he comes to. All has been heard, verse 13, chapter 12. The end of the matter is this: fear God. Revere and worship him, knowing that he is, and keep his commandments. For this is the whole of man, the full original purpose of his creation, the object of God's providence, the root of character, the foundation of all happiness. Happiness. You know, our Constitution says that we have the right to pursue happiness, but this is telling me that happiness is to pursue God. The adjustment to all inharmonious circumstances and conditions under the sun. The answer to those situations and our seasons and our storms is fear God, worship him, seek him, obey him, and the whole duty for every man. For God shall bring every work into judgment with every secret thing, whether it is good or evil. There is a purpose to every season. I went through multiple seasons in my life. We were homeless. I sat back and went, wow, I don't even know if I've ever shared that before. We were homeless for a few weeks. We'd gotten kicked out of a house illegally. My daughter was 6 months old. It was a mess. They put rat poisoning in her stuff. We lost everything, especially all of her stuff. All her clothes had to be thrown away, all of her baby bottles because they poisoned them. We lost everything. And I remember when we lived with my mother-in-law for about 3 weeks down in her basement, and I cried out to the Lord, and I said, Lord, and I've lived with my mother-in-law, and she's a great woman, but you know 2 women cannot live in the same house together because you house differently. You clean differently. You cook differently. You do everything differently. It just does not work. And I remember when my daughter moved out, and she's like, I'm sorry, Mom. And I said, no, I understand, because 2 women do it very differently. And there's a point where you have to grow up and just do it on your own. And I understand that because I'm there. You know, I've lived with my mom as an adult, gone back and stayed with her. We do things differently, and I've joked about this before. My mom has her style. She has her way, and then I have mine, and they're not the same. And I have a little bit of my mom in me, and then I have a little bit of my grandma, and I have all these other little things. And, you know, she comes and visits my house, but my house is not hers. And we have different styles, and we have different ways about dealing with it. I probably could handle living with my mom. My husband couldn't. That's 2 different styles again. So we are homeless. We were homeless for a few weeks, and then God gave us our house. So when he gave us our house, though, you think, oh, but you're in a house. All your problems were over. No, not really. Everything was broken, everything was gone, and everything was damaged. I didn't even have a pan to cook on. My brothers bought me new pans. So this was all about Thanksgiving time. And we went to Thanksgiving up at my mom and dad's, and my brothers gave us some new pans, and it was such a nice thing. I was nursing my daughter at the time, and we didn't even have, I had a mattress on the floor, and we got her crib. So she had her crib. But in the front room, all we had was a beanbag chair. And I sat in the beanbag chair and nursed her with this little tiny TV. That's all we had. Eventually, God blessed us, and we got everything back and then some. I am not without. Trust me. We're fine. But I look at the Lord and I think, I've been there where we've lost everything and had to come back. And we've lost jobs. We've struggled with infertility. And then when we did have babies, Marlena was born with the lip issue, which was a hemangioma that hung off her lip. Took a whole year to get the right guy to fix it. And she went through multiple surgeries prior to that just were so damaging to her. Ben was our next miracle, and he was born sick, and then we found out he was deaf, and then God healed him. I went through so many seasons, I think, oh my goodness. The ups and the downs. And then to have a baby and be told you can't have any more kids because of your heart. And boy, you better get that under control. And here I was having heart palpitations. Thank God he healed me. And I'm so grateful for, even in all those seasons, I learned. And then my husband and I went through restoration in our marriage and went through so much loss there. And I thought, God, I'm just going to die. This is over. Like, I'm done. And then we get through that and everything's great, and my husband's got a great job, and we moved up here, and then my husband, in one afternoon, I get this phone call. And I remember November 21st, 2013, standing on my back porch when I get the phone call, your husband's been crushed by a full ladle of molten iron. And I said, did he get burnt? 3 weeks prior, a spark had come out of that same thing and had gone through 4 layers of retardant clothing and left a scar in his arm. Did he get burnt? No, we don't think he got burnt, but he got crushed. Well, what does that mean? I did not see the mechanism. I have the picture on my phone. Until later on, we were sitting with the lawyer, and we were at our hearing for some of this. And they showed me the photo, the exact photo of where he was at in that room, and it's the actual photo online, on site, in that building. Legitly, he showed me the whole thing. Where he was at, how it happened, this. And I just began to weep because what was only words now became a picture. And I realized that day. That was a hard season. And we walked through that season for 5 years. And I remember not sleeping very much, and the shaking and the nerves and the pain. And then we went through prescription drug use that took my husband somewhere else. And we had to fight to come back. And we had to fight, and we had to get the help we needed to for him to get free. And that was another battle. And some people are just angry, and even your kids. But they just don't know. They're angry because of this, and they're angry because of that. And it's like, we fought to come back. And you try to heal, and then to see my husband walk again and run and be able to work. Yeah, he still has some things in his back, and he has to be careful. And he definitely deals with some things, and he can overdo it and does a lot. And I always tell him, we do have limits. We still have limits on this earth until God gives me a new body. And we've been through seasons, ups and downs and ebbs and flows. And many times God has told me, Jasta, just don't get bitter. And it was hard not to. Because I questioned him, what in the world? I've always believed you could heal. And I saw God. Matt would be fine for an hour after he got prayed for. And then those nerves would kick back in. And I think, Lord, I know you can heal. You healed Ben. And Ben never went back to being deaf. So I know you can heal why can't this just happen? And I look now and I think God, because God had a timing. He had something he wanted to do his way. He wanted to make sure when Matt got healed, everybody saw it. Nobody can deny it. They don't even know what to say. They just don't know. There's no argument. There's no argument like, oh, you were just faking it. After 5 years, honey, I would have known. I lived with it. I would have known. The fact that my husband has never picked up a cane since, and it is a doorstop. That's what it is. It's a doorstop. My son had to use it when the four-wheeler fell on his leg. And I let him use it for about a week. And then I looked at him and I said, put that thing down and put it back in the door. That's all it is. John Miller always talked about it being a golf club. No, it's a doorstop. That's where it belongs. Hebrews 10:35-36. Do not therefore fling away your fearless confidence, for it carries a great glorious compensation of reward. For you have need of steadfast patience and endurance, so that you may perform and fully accomplish the will of God, and thus receive and carry away and enjoy to the full what is promised to you. Don't cast away your confidence. In one moment, Elsa and Anna were just children, and in the next season, they were responsible to lead their country. Elsa had to fight past the isolation and the fears to discover her purpose. She had to be able to lead and control her emotions, which she failed at first. Anna actually chose to marry a guy she met once. She didn't marry him because the truth all kind of came out. The guy ended up being a bad guy who just wanted her position. And instead, through this journey, she meets Kristoff, who talks to a reindeer. We all need a man who talks to a reindeer. He's weird, but at least he's true. And any woman who knows, if you got one of those husbands that's a little weird, but they're true, then you got a gem. You have a Kristoff. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's a deer. So here's some things to remember. We all go through seasons, so you're not alone. I bet you somebody has gone through a season similar. You can find sisterhood in the sisters of Christ. There's not anything that you've gone through that Jesus himself hasn't borne, including your sorrows and your grief. He understands. And he said, cast your cares on him because he cares for you. Embrace the season you're in. I remember many times going to my pastor's wife when my kids were really little, and I was really struggling because I had foster kids and I had my own kids, and I was juggling all these differences and these things. And I just remember sometimes her telling me, embrace the season you're in. Yeah, because now my son is 15 and my daughter's 20. And my girls are older, and my adopted daughter's married, and we've changed. Our life has changed, and I've learned to embrace the season I'm in. I have a lot of wisdom for toddlers, mamas, those mamas that are dealing with toddlers and little kids, because I know this season is annoying, but just remember one day you won't be the cool one anymore. So enjoy the moments when they still want to hug you all the time, because one day you're not going to be the one they want to hug. So embrace the season you're in. Keep your praise. It's very easy when you're struggling with your spouse or with your kids or with a job to complain. Praise when you feel like complaining. Change your words. Learn and don't get stuck. Learn from the season you're in. Choose not to get stuck in it. Don't stay in your winter. Winter was never meant to stay forever. Alana, if you can prepare that song. Don't isolate. We were never meant to be alone and handle this life alone. In fact, Paul says to come together even more when you see the day approaching. Why? Because we need all the more strength and we need all of the more encouragement from each other. Find your purpose. Loneliness is not missing people in your life, because you can be lonely and be in a crowd. Loneliness is a lack of purpose. Loneliness is a lack of direction and not knowing where you belong. You belong where Jesus says you belong, so get to his heart and find out what that means. It's a personal journey for everybody. I can't give you some antidote and say, this is where you belong. I'm not your God. You have to seek him out. And Jesus said, if you seek me continually, you'll find me. So find your purpose and serve somewhere. Get busy doing something. One of the worst things I see with people is like, I'm so alone. Well, what are you doing? Are you helping somewhere? There's always things to do. There's always something going on. Serve somewhere. Get busy. Idle hands. Idle hands do evil things. Don't do that. Don't get idle. I'll tell you what, get around busy people and you'll get busy. There's always stuff to do. Well, I can only do it if I earn a paycheck. Then that's your problem. Because you know what? Sometimes things, paycheck? Are you kidding me? Do you know how much stuff I've done in my life and I never got paid for it? The lessons I've learned were much greater than a paycheck. What is a paycheck? Just more things for you to pay taxes on. There's so many other things that you can gather in this life besides money. Lessons are priceless. Wisdom is priceless. And the friendship of other godly women who will speak life into you is absolutely beyond priceless, because this world is full of stupid lack of wisdom. Sorry, I don't have any other word for it. I love the fact that I'm around women and they're not divas. I don't want to be around the divas. The divas don't have a brain. I want the women who have godliness in their soul and they have depth and character. I want the women who can control their emotions and know who they are. I think there's something about maturity that's, people talk about, well, you're old. No, I'm mature. I'm not foolish. I'm mature. There's a difference. And I see that as a valuable thing. See, eventually Elsa matured. She was because of her isolation, she was foolish. But she eventually matured what? To lead a kingdom. You have to have some wisdom to lead. But as you're leaders of your home, you better have wisdom. So enjoy the season you're in. Don't always look down on it. Some women think, well, I've been in the season for 40 years. Well, start asking yourself why.
Just one word for, I don't know who this is for. You said just one more thing. Lord, it's just one more thing. Add it to my list. Add it to my 100 questions of why. Have I made all the right decisions? Did I do it right? Am I worth it? Because I definitely don't feel like it. My chain has been jerked again and again. And my soul is raw. So I don't know who that is. But I did hear the Holy Spirit say, tell them that today your chains are broken. And I set you free. I have opened your prison door. And I want you to step out, take a deep sigh. It's time to move forward in me, says the Lord.